In the summer of 1776, the Second Continental Congress met to reach a decision on the issue of declaring independence from Great Britain. The colonies had been at war with the mother country for over a year, and many began to believe that the cost of war, both financially and human cost, were too great to not declare independence. A committee of 5 members, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman, were given the task of drafting the Declaration. The committee chose Jefferson to write the document and then bring it back to the committee for revisions. On June 11, 1776, Thomas Jefferson began this task. The committee revised Jefferson's draft and presented it to Congress on June 28th. It was approved on July 2nd, and Congress released it to the public on July 4th, 1776. Congress would then send it to be printed, which is why Congress did not actually sign the Declaration until August 2nd. Thomas Jefferson pulled ideas from political pamphlets that had circulated the colonies during the previous 11 years of pre-revolutionary fervor. As a deist, someone who believed in God but believed that once God created the world, he stepped back and was no longer active in the world or lives of mankind. Jefferson sought to write a document that would be acceptable to both Christians, who made up the overwhelming majority of Americans at the time, and deists. To better understand what Jefferson was saying, we're going to break down the Declaration, but to begin, let's read through the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind that requires they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall see the most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of the repeated injuries and usurpations, having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
Now let's talk about what Jefferson meant. He begins by stating that this was a unanimous decision. It was important that there not be any dissenting votes for independence so that Great Britain would understand that the colonies were united in this decision. He then explains, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This is pretty simple. Because we are choosing to cut our ties with Great Britain, we should explain to the world why we are doing this. Now we have reached the more famous part of the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident. What is self-evident? It's pretty simple. He means that these are truths that are obvious to the men signing this document, that all men are created equal. To understand this statement, you need to understand the time period in which the founders lived. Everywhere in the Western world, including the newly formed United States, this would have meant that all white male property holders were equal. This means, at the time, it did not apply to women, African Americans, Native Americans, or the poor. However, This shows how far we have come as a country, because today, Americans believe that this statement encompasses all people. He goes on to say that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What Jefferson is saying here is that there are certain rights we have that the Creator gave to us. These are unalienable rights that we have, not because someone gave them to us, but because we are born with them. It has become popular in recent years, even among some politicians and a past president, to quote the Declaration, but to leave out the words, by the Creator. This means they read the Declaration like this, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Some have argued that they leave the words, the Creator, out so as not to offend anyone or to be politically correct. However, the Creator is politically correct. Jefferson did not point to a specific God. He does not say Yahweh, God the Father, Allah, or anyone specific. At this time, everyone believed that there was a higher power that had created humans. Even deists such as Jefferson believed this. The bigger problem with leaving these words out is that it changes the meaning of the Declaration. If your unalienable rights are not given to you by God, then who gives them to you? The government would. And if the government can grant you these rights, then can't the government take them away? It is dangerous to leave words like this out of such an important document. Whether the motivation is innocent or not, the idea that our rights are granted by the government rather than rights that we have simply because we exist as human beings is dangerous. Jefferson continues on that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. We have governments simply to protect and secure our God-given rights, and the government receives the power and authority from the governed, which is us. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government. He is saying that when the government begins trampling on the rights that are given to us by the Creator, the people have the right to alter the government or to abolish it and replace it with a new government, which is what they are doing with the Declaration. This leads Jefferson into the list of grievances against the king that justify the Declaration. The list is often ignored as we focus on the first two paragraphs, but it is equally important, and I encourage you to take the time to read it.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Jefferson concludes the Declaration by stating, "These men, who had just pledged their lives to the cause, signed their name to a treasonous document for the world to see. Their pledge would not be without sacrifice."